Good evening. I declare the meeting open at 6 o'clock this evening. Councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen, we wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people. We would like to pay respect to the elders of the Noongar Nation, past and present, who have walked and cared for the land. We acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contributions made to the life of this city and this region. I now invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for your blessing upon our city, our community and our council. Guide us in all our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide the city of Wanneroo to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Please note that the audio proceedings of tonight's meetings will be live broadcast online with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. That broadcast will remain available via the City of Wanneroo website following the conclusion of this meeting. Attendances. We have apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Van Nguyen. We have an apology from Deputy Mayor Treby. We have Councillor Baker on a leave of absence from the 12th of February to the 4th of March 2023 inclusive. And Councillor Sangali has submitted a request for leave of absence for the 1st of February to the 28th of February 2023 inclusive. Do I have a mover for this leave of absence? Thank you, Councillor Miles. Thank you, Councillor Huntley, for the seconder. And I would like to cast your vote, councillors, for this. Thank you. And that has been passed unanimously. I also have a leave of absence request from Councillor Berry for the period of the 21st of February to the 30th of June inclusive. Do I have a mover for that leave of absence? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Miles, and I would like us all to cast a vote on that. Thank you. Councillor Huntley, are you voting on this item? Okay, and that was also passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now go to item 3, which is public question time, and the following general rules apply to public question time and statement time. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of the local government and should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting, and only questions that relate to the purpose of the meeting will be considered at a special council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at specific council members or a city employee. Questions are not to be framed in such a way as to reflect adversely on a particular council member or a city employee. First priority will be given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the current council meeting agenda, and second priority will be given to public statements. Only public statements regarding items on the council agenda under consideration will be heard. Each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement may address the council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. We have had some questions and statements in writing, but I understand that they're going to be asked by the people here this evening. So I'll go to questions and Rod Clifford. Thank you, Mr. Clifford. If you'd like to come down and give us your name and the suburb where you live. Thank you.
Rod Clifton, and I'm from Carrama. I live in Spring Park Trail. The reason I'm here tonight, Mayor and councillors, is a year or so ago a home was demolished at 4 Spring Park Trail, and subsequently a new premises was being constructed. At the time there was a sign put up out the front of the property depicting a home was being built. Prior to construction being completed, it became apparent that this was an NDIS facility purposely being built for an NDIS facility. which raised some concerns. But nonetheless, the building was occupied, and there shortly after we started to experience problems within the community, both in our own street and further afield. There was damage not only to the property itself by certain people, clients, but also people's property passing by. There were various cars damaged and so on. There was destruction of the property that was strewn through the street, letterboxes and all sorts of things. So with this, there was also another aspect. The clientele were allowed to roam the streets, and there's various comments being posted on the Carramar Rural Facebook. Many people were in fear, in fact, of going past this facility, some even stating that they wouldn't even dare drive past after the vehicles had been damaged. So this is some of the incidents that had occurred, and you can imagine how we as the neighbours felt. There was anxiety, a bit of fear perhaps even amongst ourselves. Even when people came to visit, we had to notify them that if anyone was out the front with a rock prepared to throw it, that they needed to be aware of this for their own safety and their vehicles and so on. But the question I have here is, sorry, I'll have to raise this up a bit closer. There's a point here in relation to the responsibility as well that these people, or in response to the people's having damaged, they weren't prepared to take responsibility. There was no accountability. So many of the people that had damage have had to pay the access for their vehicles themselves. So that's another aspect. In the property law, there's a covenant to quiet enjoyment in a implied term which allows every leaser or tenant should have quiet and peaceful possession in the leased premises. So I'd argue that with that facility there, it hasn't been the case neither for the people there, but certainly for the residents as well in the street.
Thank you. I might ask Mr Van Heideman if he can respond to it. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, yes, I can confirm that the city approved planning application for a single house on the premises. So in terms of single house approval, there can be up to 6 people living in a facility. So we consider this like, it's not a planning term, but like it is like a share house. In terms of antisocial behaviour, that is something for the police, and I would suggest that the police be contacted in terms of that. I can also advise in terms of the bushfire and in terms of all the other things, in terms of the water tanks, that all complies to the planning scheme.
Just in response to the councillor's comment, if I could, the police have been notified on various occasions, reports have been taken, but that's the limit as to what they can do, unfortunately. These are just some of the matters. I won't go into it any further tonight because it'll take hours. I would like to see, if possible, if the council, the mayor, the councillors would be able to meet with the community in whole. There's obviously a few of us here tonight from the street, but the greater community as well wish to engage, can raise their concerns. Again, my neighbour will be raising further to your point about it being a home as such in our special rural area. So I might leave my questions there, excuse me, and let that be followed on. Thank you.
Thank you. We would be happy to have a meeting and to discuss the situation and see if there's anything we can advocate for you and support you for the amenity of your residents. I understand where you're coming from there. I just want to acknowledge that Mr M. Enkel from Bankshire Grove submitted a question this evening, which we will have the answer to in the minutes. Mr G. Tatum from Carramar has as well, regarding the same item that was just discussed, and Mrs Dot Newton has an item as well, and these will be included, the responses to these will be included in our minutes. And Mr Tatum, you're coming to ask some questions as well. If you'd like to just mention your name and your suburb, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I received a response from the city just as I walked in the door, a reference PQ02-02-23. So it's in response to my first question, which is asking for the definition between a single house, which was approved, the approval given at 4 Spring Park Trail, and a aged or dependent person's dwelling. Now, the current NDIS house has ability of 4 occupants plus support staff. There are 2 support staff, at least 2 support staff 24 hours a day. They also have other services coming in for various needs, as it were. The owner of the house has leased it to a company called, Ability Housing, and they also have, the carers are engaged by BGSR Proprietary Limited. As I said, the carers are there 24/7. We've seen up to 9 vehicles on site and up to 5 vehicles overnight. I would suggest to the city that this is a commercial business happening on this residence. Therefore, I further ask the city to define why this particular building is not classed as an aged or dependent care house dwelling. And also I'd like to ask whether there are going to be further developments of this kind allowed in the special rural area.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. I'll just refer your question to Mr. Bowring.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. You've provided a written response to the 2 questions that you asked on that. I just can further elaborate on some of the points you've just made. The city received an application and processed an application for a single house. In my previous responses to you, I've said that it needs to operate as a single house. From what I'm saying, from what I gather, your accusation in a way is that it's a dependent person's dwelling, which is a different land use, which is prohibited in that zone. The distinction is between whether or not it's a dependent person's dwelling or a single house, and that is something the city can look into and investigate and discuss with the operator. But the understanding is that there's 4 people living in there on a residential tenancy agreement. So that they are it's a single residential house that they have assistants to live, but they're not dependent persons as in a nursing home. So there is a distinction, but it's which side of the line that distinction falls on. Thank you.
Sorry, just in a quick response.
Yes.
24-hour care suggests that they're not independent people, they're dependent people living there, and there are numerous providers and numerous vehicles providing that service. Therefore, by definition, which you've written in your response, an aged or dependent person's dwelling means a dwelling designed or solely used for accommodating of aged or dependent persons. The house was purposely designed for this, and it's got dependent persons in it. I'm happy to leave it as that, if the council can review it.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum, and Mr. Bowring and our officers will get back in contact with you, and if we can organise a meeting, maybe that would be a good idea to discuss it further. We're quite happy to pursue this and make the best amenity for the whole community. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Tatum.
Well, 2 years old on 131 Russet Gardens and at 7 Spring Park Trail. They're relatively new, but the conditions of development approval was that they had to have a 135,000 litre water tank for firefighting purposes. I'll use 4 Spring Park Trail as an example. The tank there is hard to get to. It's close to fire like shrubbery, etc. I doubt whether any four-wheel drive will get to it without some difficulty. The fire tank is connected to the domestic hot water system, to domestic cold supply to the house. They run out of water regularly. The bore doesn't work, it's not connected, it's been decommissioned. They rely on some rainwater, but that's out of commission because of broken pipework. So my concern is that the council is on their conditions saying, provide a tank for firefighting services. But there's no information about what the tank requires, access, how to be used, is it allowed to be connected to the domestic coal system, does it have to be full of water? It can sit out in the middle of a paddock, nobody can get, or in the middle of trees, nobody can get to it. We're concerned because we're in a very high fire zone area, and yet firefighting equipment can't use it. Yet it's a requirement on the building code, on the building approval.
Thank you, Mr Tatum. I think there's two areas here to respond to this, at Mr Bowring firstly, and then maybe community services with our fire services.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Aiken. The scheme requires a minimum 90,000 litre domestic water supply tank under a town planning scheme number 2. It has a 135,000 litre water tank for that purpose. I understand that they are seeking to re-establish the bore. I'd spoken to the operators yesterday about that, but they don't need any approval from us to do that. They just need to reactivate the bore. I wasn't aware of the issues with the equipment. They are required under the state planning policy 3.7 planning for bushfire prone areas to have a 10,000 litre water tank for firefighting purposes. There's a set of Australian standards that DFAS require them to comply with. We can look into whether or not the tank is, or they have actually 2 tanks on site for that purpose, which are, I think, a total 9,000 each. And we can look into whether or not they are compliant with those standards. So there's two requirements, but I think what you've in your statement may have mixed up the domestic water supply tank with the requirement for the bushfire tanks, which is a much smaller tank at only 10,000 under state planning policy.
Sorry, didn't quite catch all of that, but the concern is that we have these the requirement for these tanks, but no conditions on how the tank should be used, what shall be supplied with the tank. So you could supply a tank there, and there's no valves, no fittings, no nothing.
So what we'll do is I'll arrange for you to talk with Mr Bowring about this and with our bushfire officers or volunteer fire brigades and chief bushfire officer, and they will go through the conditions, and if they're not compliant they will speak with the owners of these properties and deal with it for the safety of the community. But we'll start off-site with the conversation with our chief bushfire officer and Mr Bowring. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, so just to finish off, Four Spring Park Trail doesn't have a domestic water supply. It doesn't have a bore pump, it doesn't have filter water. It's just got the fire tank, as far as I know. Thank you.
Thank you, we'll follow through on that. Our next question is from Mr Stephen Faulkner. Mr Faulkner, could you please mention your name and your suburb, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Steve Faulkner and I'm from in Grey Gum Crescent in Quinns Rock. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to speak. This is my first time standing at this podium, so always up for something new. Just got one question tonight. I note the city has a youth plan. Can you please explain how purposely excluding young people 16 and under from participating in the city survey regarding the future of the old Quinns Rock Caravan Park is, and I quote, ensuring young people are valued, empowered and supported to reach their full potential and connected to the community to support wellbeing, health, safety, participation and opportunity.
Thank you, Mr Faulkner. I'll just ask Ms Jennings if she can respond to that.
Thank you, Mayor. This question has come through today and we're currently looking at that one. So if I could take it on notice, please.
Okay, so we'll respond to you that question on notice. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you for your time. I've got 80 kids to go and train, so I'm out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, we've got Mr George Tucker. If he could come and ask his questions and his suburb, please. Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillors. George Tucker from Lansdale. My questions are in relation to UP 01-02/23. There's 9 short questions and they've been divided between myself and the 2 other speakers. Video footage and photographs of activities on Arduane Park, as requested by the Mayor during the Council briefing session on the 14th of February 23, have now been viewed by the City staff members. The following questions are based on the findings and viewing of those videos and photographs. The first question being, did the footage show that the cricket matches were being played by adults?
Mr Dixon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the video footage that I've observed did show some adults playing cricket.
Mr Tucker?
Thank you. Although the noise, so question 2, although the noise levels were recorded and could not realistically be compared to the actual attendance in person of Arduane Park at the time, based on the footage, does the City suggest the noise levels were reasonable and acceptable to local residents, considering that these levels are often sustained for periods of over an hour?
Thank you. Mr Dixon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I did observe some noise from the video footage that I saw. The level of noise, there was some louder noise on occasions as wickets were taken and catches and so on, but you would expect, in my view, some level of noise to occur from the use of a local park of this nature.
Thank you. Mr Tucker?
Thank you. Question 3, did the footage show a young boy running from the park onto Arduane Street to retrieve a ball which had been batted out of the park by an adult player without looking for any sign of oncoming traffic on Arduane Street?
Mr Dixon?
Yes, again, through you, Madam Mayor, I can confirm that part of the video footage did show a boy running onto the street from the park area.
Mr Tucker?
Thank you, Mayor. Question 4, did this show that the cricket is not contained within the boundaries of Arduane Park, and was it an indication of how hard and how far the ball is being hit?
Mr Dixon?
Again, through you, Madam Mayor, I think there was one instance where it was observed that a ball had come from the park onto a neighbouring property.
Mr Tucker?
Thanks, Mayor. Question 5, did the footage show the parking issues at Arduane Park, namely many cars parked on the surrounding footpath?
Mr Dixon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I must admit I didn't notice the level of parking around the park. I'd have to take that question on notice and review the footage again.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Mr Tucker?
Thank you, Mayor. Question 6, did the footage show that the damaged areas on the surface of Arduane Park are directly located in the spots where the wickets are placed, and the same level of damage isn't evident on the rest of the main grassed area?
Mr Dixon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the video footage that I observed didn't go into that level of detail, unless I didn't see all of the video footage that was provided. But what I saw, there wasn't any evidence of, from the images that I saw, there wasn't any evidence of damage to the park. Having said that, I have visited the park myself, and I have observed that there are areas of turf that have been used quite heavily on Arduane Park.
Thank you. Mr Tucker?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 questions left. I'm happy to pass on to the other speakers, or Mayor, if you're obliged.
It's up to you. I'm quite happy for you to keep going. And
Thank you, Mayor. I'll continue. Question 7, did any of these points appear in the Rangers reports, which the recommendation not to prohibit ball sports such as cricket on Arduane Park is based upon?
Mr Dixon?
Sorry, could you repeat that question again, please?
Apologies. So the previous points discussed, questions asked and points discussed tonight, did any of these points appear in the Rangers reports which the recommendation not to prohibit ball sports such as cricket on Arduane Park is based upon?
Mr Dixon?
So through you, Mayor, administration's report is based on, I think, at least 25 visits to the park to observe the level of activity. It also reflects, obviously, responding to the petition that we've had. Administration's view is that it's not reasonable to ban the use of the park for cricket or volleyball. However, acknowledging that I think there was an opportunity for the city to engage with the users of the park to try and encourage them, when there are large numbers of people using the park, to frequent neighbouring parks which are larger to accommodate, in instances, large numbers of people that are using the park.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Mr Tucker?
Thank you, Mayor. And just in quick response, and this is not directed at any staff member, that the 25 visits, from my recollection, doesn't appear in the report. As I believe there were dates of and particularised visits by the Rangers, and from my recollection, it wasn't 25. Question 8, if the cricket matches on Arduane Park are allowed to continue indefinitely, could the city provide an estimate of how much council / ratepayers funds will be allocated towards the avoidable repair work, and for how long?
Mr Singh?
Madam Mayor, it depends upon the damage of the more than usual maintenance we require. So at this point in time, I can't provide an estimate. I will have to take that on notice.
Thank you. He'll take that on notice and respond to you, his response. And Mr Tucker, question 9.
Thank you, Mayor. Final question. Now that the footage has been viewed and several points on our petition have subsequently been addressed, will the city accept any responsibility for ongoing damage to property or potential traffic accidents which we believe have been highlighted in our petition and which could be construed by ratepayers as being a direct consequence for allowing the cricket matches on Arduane Park to continue?
I'll just pass that to the CEO. Mr CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, there is a general obligation to the public to use public reserves in a responsible way, but I will take that question on notice and provide a more in-depth answer.
Thank you. So we've also got Mr John McKenna and Ms Julie Tucker, but all of your questions were asked by Mr Tucker. So we'll are there any questions from the gallery this evening? Yes. Would you like to come to the podium and give us your name and suburb, please?
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, my name is Xiong Pin Garfi. I live in a suburb in Karamar. I'm the owner the dairy. Before dairy, I bought from 2012, but now I sell pretzel. But I very disappointed because why I just open the pretzel, I wake up very early in morning, I serve community, I not make trouble. It's a good citizen. I'm living here 32 years. I'm married with my husband, but my husband already passed 3 years ago. Exactly is 2020. From yesterday is 3 years. But must suppose my 2 children. I have exactly 6 children, but 4 already growing. They still help me too. I thank you with my God, Jesus Christ, because they always help me. I believe it give me healthy, but I don't understand why all the time from since I close the deli, I can't open to deli because my customer all the time is less and less and less and gone because the Banksia Grove, since the Banksia Grove shopping center open, Audi, Woodward, and another one Coles, and my customer is gone. I can't, and the price is up, and I must pay mortgage. I must pay everything I need. I not suppose from centering payment. I doing by myself, work very hard, but I always thank you with my Jesus Christ. Always keep me healthy, but I don't understand why all the time I'm a little bit depressing, honest with you, because I'm open, still have many time about council complain about my shop. I think it sound like no fair, because I support from community. I not make trouble. What must I do if I know doing to pay my mortgage? Why I can buy something I not supposed from government? What must I do?
Mrs. Garvey, I understand your predicament and I am empathetic with it. But what we might do is I might get Mr. Bowring to, he can make a short statement if you want to, but maybe you two need to have a meeting tomorrow and to discuss the situation and see what we can do to just facilitate things going forward so it works better for you and for the city as well. Mr. Bowring?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Aiken. Hello, Mrs. Garvey. We met last week after the briefing session,
Yeah,
and I sent you the email with all of the details about what you need to do to progress allowing your takeaway food premises to operate from the corner store. Happy to have another meeting with you and talk you through it again if you want to do that, but that's not a problem.
Are we able to help her with getting through this, because it might be a little bit difficult for her with English not being her first language?
I think it's absolutely, I still can talking. Even your CEO, I know, David Sim, he know my husband is Brian Garvey. And you, Mayor, I think you know my son is Gary Garvey before apply councillor, and you go to my shop too. And Paul Miles know too. I think Frank Stephen, you know my husband too. From when I live in Woodville, he sell property. I think a few people know, like Mayor Tracy Robert. I hope you help, please.
Yes,
Thank
we
you
will
very
do
much.
everything we can within our roles. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Okay, I declare question time closed. Item 4 is confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover and seconder for, I'll join them together, OCO 1-2-23 and SOC 2-23, minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 6th of December and minutes of the special council meeting held on the 31st of January. Do I have a mover for this? Yes, Councillor Rose, seconder. Councillor Savitten, could we please cast our vote? And Councillor Savitten, you're having the same problem I am, getting it to register your vote. That's okay. and passed unanimously. I have no announcements this evening. Item 6, questions from council members, which are to relate only to the business of council as you've received information before. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, my question goes to something that Mr. Tatum my question relates to what Mr. Tatum asked during his deputation, I guess, to one of our officers. It does concern me that it sounds like, and I guess this is where some legal advice might have to be got, if administration can do it, that the building, which was supposed to be a residential home for those that are living in there, but it does seem and sound like it's gone through several other parties in some sort of commercial business sense. So it's gone from the residential, it sounds like, to being a commercial business, and I guess it'd be nice to understand what that definition is, either by a note during the week or if Mr. Bowring would like to address it now.
Mr. Bowring.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Aiken. We can certainly get an interpretation. The use classes are expressed both in Town Planning Scheme, District Planning Scheme 2 and the Residential Design Codes. They're fairly straightforward, but there is some grey area in terms of how it's managed, and that may be a distinction that we need to look at. So I'm happy to go and look at that further.
Thank you, Mr. Bowring. Any other questions? There are no more questions, councillors. I'll move on to petitions. We have 2 new petitions this evening. Councillor Coetzee.
Sorry, Mayor, I have a question, but it's not related to the agenda.
It has to be related to the items on the agenda this evening. If you can send a question in to the CEO or to the corporate staff, but not. It has to be related to the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to petitions. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I have 2 petitions. The first one is an objection to a BMX track redevelopment at McCoy Park. There are 13 signatories, and it reads as follows. We, the local residents who surround the park, would like to have a residential meeting with the council to raise our concerns about the BMX track. We would like to petition for it to be relocated to a more suitable, larger area. Their main concerns is that it's close proximity to our homes. There is dust, motorbikes at night, quad bikes during the day, and heavy-duty remote control car noise. School PE classes during the day. There is no parking. Rangers not attending. Always asking us to call the police, for example, to read the motorbikes. There is a risk to bird life in the main big tree, and vandalism of nature is being caused to newly planted trees, motorbikes being one of the main causes, etc. Should relocating it not be an option, we would like strategies in place to deal with the risk factors. For example, wet down the track at night when the dust is the problem, and rangers to patrol more frequently, and also barriers to stop motorbikes. That's the first one. The second petition is to investigate the damage around the city caused by the planting of London plane trees, and the residents would like them removed. I have a total amount of 126 signatures on this petition, and it reads, we, the undersigned, do formally request Council's consideration to the petition to investigate the damage and advise the community of impending actions to prevent ongoing risk to health and safety of community members and infrastructure caused by the London plane tree throughout the city of Wanneroo, with examples at Wadhurst Road and Warnford Street, Butler. The trichomes cause a range of irritant effects from an overpopulation of the trees. The roots of the London plane tree are so tough and aggressive that it can, as evident by the current state of the pathways near these overpopulated trees, lift sidewalks and curbs, invade sewer pipes, and crack building foundations. It is a safety hazard to those who use the footpath, including disabled members of the community, including the difficulties of navigating around the damaged paths via a wheelchair. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Parker, do you have a seconder for both of those petitions? Councillor Coetzee? Okay, so I would like to put it to the vote to receive the petitions. Thank you. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Now, Councillor Herridge, do you have a procedural motion? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I'm proposing to move forward an item that's further in the agenda as we have some residents here that we've heard tonight. If we can move CP 010223 for the petition for the ball sports forward, that would be wonderful.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. And we'll just vote for the procedural motion. That is carried unanimously. So we go straight to CPO 10223. Who would like to move this substantive? Councillor Rowe, and Councillor Svitten will second it. Is there an amendment? Yes. Would you like to move the amendment, Councillor Herridge?
I'd love to move the amendment.
And who would like to second the amendment, please? Thank you, Councillor Parker. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the amendment
Absolutely.
first?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm half asleep back here at the background. Okay, so bear with me for a second. January last year, our locals reached out to me about the use of Ardwayne Park, which we've heard a lot more on tonight, which was awesome to hear some more background. I've come to know them well and I empathise and understand the point they have reached to present the petition which we're considering. After consultation with the city themselves, myself, we've involved our parks, ranger and community teams, and we've covered a lot of ground in the last 12 months. What we have here is an opportunity to explore something a little bit more and support our community to come together with a neighbourhood type event on the park to promote a positive, but most importantly, respectful environment where everybody is welcome to enjoy. This amendment has been a collaborative effort with Councillor Parker and Rowe and Acting Community Placement Director Mark Dixon with his team, Rowan and Nick, who have also reached out to our residents in the last week. This in itself actually embodies what we're aiming to also achieve. To also have this space then monitored across the next 12 months by council. I do my own tiki tours around there as well. To then have the outcomes come back to us so we can revisit this is an awesome achievement as well. Lansdale is a fantastic community who enjoy their local spaces. I've recently come to realise that this isn't actually just at Ardwayne Park, it's also mirrored at our neighbouring parks, at Fregola and Hardcastle, all of which are very close proximity. Families of all backgrounds are utilising these spaces as they are intended by our planners and developers, for those obviously in their surrounding homes, to socialise and be outdoors with their neighbours and family. The spaces that we're building are actually being very successful. We just need to lend our residents a hand to make sure that everyone is being respectful and can use it for now and in the long term. I also think it's important to acknowledge that these families with young children are also attending the same local school together. What decisions we can make today will affect a whole community. For these reasons, I understand the recommendation of admin to not support, to ban the ball sports, but this can impact an entire community, both our children and adults. With the amendment of a stronger emphasis on further positive community engagement, we have the ability to bring together everybody and not divide. I hope fellow councillors as well as our locals are encouraged to support this amendment, a holistic approach to a situation that may not dissipate should a ban be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this motion, amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Herridge, for this proposed amendment. the importance of local parks cannot be questioned. The environmental and recreational benefits to our residents is well documented, undeniable, and vital to our society. Local parks enable friends to meet up, families to play together, and create opportunities to meet with local residents and assist in creating a happy, safe, and vibrant neighbourhood. Councillor Smith, Huntley, and Councillor Herridge and myself attended the Urban Forest Conference at Curtin University last Friday. Amongst others, we attended a session that discussed in great detail exactly this subject. It is a proven fact that the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of every individual is enhanced by the outdoor recreation supplied by local parks. Studies have and continue to show that physical exercise done outdoors promotes physical health, improves self-esteem and self-reliance, and reduces stress in adults and, importantly, children. Modern homes are being built on ever-decreasing lot sizes, increasing the reliance and importance of responsible local governments ensuring the development and then sustainability of local parks. Arduin Park is a successful example of all of the above. Unfortunately, too much so at this point. I would be very hesitant to ever support a motion or petition prohibiting acceptable activities at any of the city's local parks. For this reason, it is vital the issues brought to Council and the administration's attention be addressed. The city's strategic community plan prioritises bringing people together and further understanding our stakeholders, who are our ratepayers' needs. This amendment does exactly that. I'm extremely happy to second and support this proposed amendment and sincerely appreciate the work that Councillor Herridge has done to date and look forward to everyone working together towards a solution for the entire community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Do I have any speakers against this amendment? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, look, question, and I guess it comes back to some questions that Mr Tucker asked earlier to our director, acting director tonight. I guess I would like to understand when those 25 visits by Ranger Services happened, because that wasn't in the report and it is new information, and I think it is a significant piece of information to understand why were they called out? Was it parking? Was it just a noise, amenity? You know, people using the bushes in the wrong place. So can we have a bit more information around the visits done by administration?
Councillor Miles, I think that was taken on notice, but Mr Dixon, would you like to respond to that, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, I am happy to provide a response. So Rangers have visited the park on 25 occasions, ranging from January last year through to October last year. And since the council meeting, the Rangers I've requested that officers from the city, following the council briefing, have been out on 3 different occasions between last Tuesday and this Tuesday, and didn't observe any people using the park or antisocial behaviour. With regard to the historical visits, so during the period between January and April 2022, Rangers visited the park on 10 different occasions, and the park was being well used with no antisocial behaviour observed. Of those 10 visits, only twice was it observed people playing cricket. And then in October last year, there was a further 15 visits, and similarly, on a couple of occasions, people were observed playing cricket, but there was no antisocial behaviour that was seen. So that's the times, obviously, that administration has been out to visit the park in response to complaints that were received in terms of noise and behaviour from the people that were using the park.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Do we have any speakers against this amendment? If we have no speakers against this amendment, I'll put it to the vote. And that's passed unanimously. We now go to the substantive, which was moved by Councillor Rowe. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the substantive, please?
Yes, the substantive as amended. Happy to do so just briefly, Mayor. I do acknowledge the proposed amendment, and I did think it was important to try to continue to resolve the issue diplomatically, but also the final point of the amendment, which was to say that surveillance should continue to occur and council should be briefed on the outcome of that over the coming months. I think it is a challenging situation, and the reason that I could not support the petition was because I do think it sets a precedent of banning a recreational sport of this nature at this park. If it was to have been approved in those terms, it could have been used as a precedent to prohibit recreational cricket at other parks as well. However, I do actually sympathise with the residents, and that was the reason for the basis of my questions last week. So I think going forward, we do need, aside from the vote tonight, have a stronger discussion about what constitutes reasonable noise, because what we were told last week was it was down to the interpretation of the rangers who were attending the site, and not all rangers have the same level of hearing ability. What one views as reasonable might be completely different to what another does, and we were told that this type of noise wouldn't require an acoustic report. So unless we have some quantitative data to support it, it's just simply based on the interpretation of the individual attending the site. So I think we need to be more coherent about what reasonable noise means. The point that was raised in the questions tonight was also about the degradation of the turf, and I ask whether it's reasonable for a small park without adequate provision of sporting facilities for ratepayer funds to be diverted to top dressing works for the turf more regularly than should be required. So I do think that needs to be looked into as well, and also ongoing efforts to try and request and encourage the group that's using the site to explain to them why it's potentially not fit for purpose, why it is having an impact, an ongoing negative impact on the surrounding residents, and trying to explore the options of whether cricket facilities exist at either Fragola or some other park. From my own assumptions, I believe that those parks are well utilised at this stage, but I do think it's important over the next 12 months to try and continue to encourage the group to use a facility that might be more fit for purpose, so we can try and resolve this, given the passion and the negative experience that the residents have articulated very well, I must say, over the last 2 weeks. And I thank you for engaging with Council on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Very little further to say, other than noise being the critical thing here. I live probably a kilometre from the Kingsway Sporting Complex, and on Saturday mornings, the noise from the netball courts is quite deafening, to be honest, and it's been like that for me for many, many, many years, in fact probably 30. So I empathise with the petitioners and Mr and Mrs Tucker. I believe that these parks have been these subdivisions have been well planned, and the reserves have been well located. We're going to get situations like this occurring from time to time, but I'm hopeful that this will only be a phase, and over time that things will settle down. And in terms of the city maintaining the parks too, I think we'll just watch the wear and tear on that to make sure that they're presentable for all the residents in that area. And look, I just wish everybody all the best in that particular area, and just hope things they do settle down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Do I have any speakers against this amended substantive motion? If I have no speakers against, I will move that we cast the vote now. Thank you. And that's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Is there another item that we want to do a procedural motion on to move forward? Yes, Councillor Wright, would you like to do a procedural motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It was just for item CS 090223, which was the proposed agreement for the lease for the Wildflower Society.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. And Councillor Herridge, would you like to second that? Thank you. Can we go to the vote to bring that item forward on the agenda, please? Please cast your vote. I'm having real problems with this. Councillor Parker and Councillor Coetzee. And that is passed unanimously. So it's item CSO 9223, the proposed agreement for lease and ground lease to the Wildflower Society. Oh, we have a declaration of interest. Yeah, yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. So in regards to item CSO 90223, I disclosed that I had met with the proponents for a site tour and a tour of the facilities. And as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on this matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yes, Councillor Rowe.
Making the exact same declaration, so in relation to CSO 9-0223, I disclose that I also met with the proponents. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected, but I declare that I will consider it on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Do I have a mover for this item? Yes, Councillor Wright. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a brief opportunity to visit the Society last week with Richard Curry and Sean Tennant, who's in our audience tonight. And it was really phenomenal to see the work they're doing around protecting West Australian native flora. And I think it was such a unique concept about what they've done and how they've brought the community together, sharing their passion for native flora. And Sean, who's in our audience tonight, spoke a lot about the partnership with local government and how critical that is. And there was a lot of programs around rehabilitation, particularly for verges, roundabouts and other projects, that is quite unique for a concept of protecting endangered native flora in the area. And I think to be able to see this new lease, if it does get passed by council, is such a unique opportunity, being the largest wildflower society in our area, but also in the state. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. But it's such a unique opportunity to be able to have such a community precinct. Noticing that the other two agreements are still pending at the moment, but in regards to this group, being the Wildflower Society, the concept of creating community gardens, protecting and an educational approach for school groups to come in to be able to learn about what protecting endangered species is all about in regards to flora. And it was just incredible to see the work that had gone in and the strong partnership that the City of Wanneroo had in regards to the making of their brochure that they currently have, and also the work that the City has done in partnership with that. And I think that should be applauded to see how local government can really make a difference to a not-for-profit society. So I urge all the councillors to support this and see this fantastic project go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I too obviously support this project. This is a phenomenal project that the Wildflower Association do. And with our native trees at the moment being threatened, we have very few Banksias, certainly Banksia areas left. We have lost our chewits, and we've also lost the ability of having trees that are over 100 years old that actually can sustain our wild birds and certainly our cockatoos. So it is really, really important that we have, you know, to a certain degree, this might be too little too late, but we have to start somewhere, and this is phenomenal because these guys produce the food and the accommodation for our native wildlife. And it is so, so important that we actually reintroduce that within our city zones so that some of these wildlife can actually survive there. Otherwise, we're not going to have anything left. And our children are going to grow up seeing plastic kangaroos or toy kangaroos. They're going to see a parrot as a stuffed animal, and they're going to see cows and sheep in fields. So it is essential that we change this and we keep our native species running, and the way we're going to do that is to change the native canopy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Do we have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. Please cast your vote. And that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll go back to the agenda as written. And we go to planning and sustainability with the strategic land use and planning environment, PSO 1-2-23. Do I have a mover for this item? Yes, Councillor Miles. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Civic. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, please, Mayor. Another year goes and as another annual review for the East Wanneroo cells. It is good that administration are working towards the closure of some of these cells, and hopefully in the next 12 months we can see that closure, because we've been hearing that for the last 3 years. The annual cost to keep these cells just active by way of audits and having the other costs associated with it is becoming to a point where I think it's getting a bit $70,000 just for auditing and advertising costs and on an annual basis is too much. With that said, I'm totally in support of the actual each of the cells amendments, each of the cells land costs, if there is any more acquisitions that got to be acquired. There are some areas that are obviously at 90% completion, and they're the ones obviously we do have to ratify sooner. And if administration can obviously acquire the land that needs to be required, especially in those areas that are in need of public open space, as we've just dealt with an item earlier tonight with regard to open space. So we do need to bring in some close areas, that open space sooner rather than later. But with that said, I'm happy to put the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also agree with Councillor Miles on this. Too much time has gone by now, and many of these cells are realising their capacity. We need to look at closing them. I think in time, over the next 2 or 3 years, we really have to look at that, because for those properties that are existing in those almost developed cells, maybe we can come to some arrangement with those people, special arrangements when they are subdivided. But there are many people ringing me and asking me who are developers, by the way, or being private and or companies, etc. And some of those companies may be closing, etc. So those funds are still in the kitty and may need to be sorted out. And that also applies to private property owners who have subdivided their land. So on the overall, I'm more than happy with the valuations. I see that some of the landowners have asked, or developers have asked, for reduction in development costs, etc. Administration is firm in saying no, and I agree with that. I think on the overall, let's just get on with it, close them as soon as we possibly can, move on, because they have been here too long. But the recommendation is sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Do I have a speaker against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, I move to cast our vote. Thank you, councillors. And that's passed unanimously. PSO 223, consideration of amendment number 196 to District Planning Scheme number 2 following advertising. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Miles. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Huntley. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. Look, this is actually the closing and advertising and the consideration of this amendment is a straightforward piece of red tape. However, both Councillor Huntley and myself are familiar, as others in the room, and also articulated by a deputational speaker at the Speakers Gallery earlier, that there is the local deli, or I shouldn't say that, it's the corner store down there, and obviously through business decisions they've had to adapt and adopt their business to try and obviously stay within the market of having the corner local store. I do welcome the fact that our Director of Planning and also the Manager of Mr Bowring have met with the owner and discussed the process on how to bring about a level of food delivery service from a corner store, and that's going to happen, I believe, next month. We may see that in another piece of planning material that comes before Council. But for now, I'm happy to support this amendment. It is about normalising the area and removing the amendment is about normalising the area and removing some of the older scheme in place. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This for our community is very hard to understand. We have a policy that is almost restrictive in its way it's written. We have a corner store and we have a takeaway facility. A takeaway facility can be anything right up to a McDonald's drive-through, which really does not help or assist a corner store in any form. And the issues is that petrol stations can now sell food, they can sell everything that a corner store does, and most petrol stations are now being approved on corners. So the corner store, really and truthfully, at the moment, the legislation is actually demising the purpose of a corner store. But a corner store is still there. It is still in a residential street. It is still a major part of the community hub. And I think there is no way that we should push out a corner store. And as you can hear from the lady talking tonight, she can't understand why this legislation is doing this. And it's doing it because there is nothing in between a corner store and a takeaway food outlet, which is massive. So, as my colleague said, we, the moment administration are looking at a way of making sure that there is a middle ground, and so we don't lose our corner store. It is so important that we allow our community to diversify within the realms of a corner store. It's not just a tin of cat food and a loaf of bread. It needs to be more. And if they are going to survive, they need the establishment of a form of cottage industry within the realms under the guide of a corner store. So we really need to do some work to make sure that we don't lose this very valuable business to our residents and to the community as well. So I'm sure we'll be looking at that. As for the motion tonight, it is really just to level out, but there are things in place to help and make sure that we can define this in a much better way in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, could you please cast your vote? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Item PSO 3-223, proposed repeal of the Extractive Industries Local Law. Do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Wright, and seconder, Councillor Savitton. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor. Speaks for itself. Thank you.
Councillor Savitton, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, just briefly. Certainly, the extractive industries policy needs to be tidied up, etc. It's been around for too long, and I'm pleased that administration have narrowed down and modified and improved the actual policy on this, and I'm more than happy to second the item. I think we certainly need this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Do I have any speakers against this item? No. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I've got no speakers against this item, I move to the vote. Thank you.
Can I just have a point of order, please, Mayor?
Which clause, Councillor
Under
White?
clarification.
Under which clause of the standing orders?
Clarification on your ruling that we're no longer allowed to speak for an item just because there's nobody speaking against it. So if you're changing what we have known in this chamber for some time, and you've been a councillor, that we were all allowed to be able to speak for or against and not the debate shut down. So are you now making a new ruling that unless somebody speaks against an item, there will be no further discussion?
This is, yes, that is the ruling the presiding member has made, and that is in line of how meetings are conducted at Stirling and other councillors around the City of Perth. Sorry? No, we are the City of Wanneroo, and I am the presiding member, and that is the decision I've made. Thank you, Councillor Miles. We will go to a vote on this item. Thank you. That was passed unanimously. We go to Waste Services, item ASO 1223, the Bulk Waste Review Community Engagement Outcomes. Do I have a mover on this item? A declaration of interest, is it? Oh, Councillor Rowe, you can move this item, and Councillor Savitton, if you'd like to second it. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I have great interest in it, but no interest to declare. So,
thank you.
I just wanted to use the allotted time to put some comments on the record and talk about some of the important benefits that will be received by this bulk waste review being carried out in the coming years. So the first is that I do think it highlights the success of the service review model. We've talked about how reviews are carried out, efficiencies are sought, alternatives are proposed, consultation takes place, and then now we're into what hopefully after tonight will be the education and the transition phase. I think it's also about improving the customer experience. What this really is all about is making bulk waste collection more convenient for ratepayers, to not be locked into a fixed schedule during the middle of winter, often with extreme weather conditions where wind leads to large quantities of rubbish being blown all over the road and the city receiving many complaints. I do think there's been a bit of confusion around the model, so I did want to be clear for the record. The bulk waste service is not being taken away. That's the first comment I think we should probably put out there. It's evolving to an on-demand model that will better align with the modern community, because many of us represent areas where there are smaller properties with limited verge space, different forms of bulk waste. So in a changing community, we have a changing model of waste service management. I hope that the transition to an on-demand model will be stable and orderly. The current service is remaining in effect for 2023, and this year's schedule, as the Director clarified last week, is already available on the City's website several months earlier than required. I do think good communication is going to be critical to the success of this project. So from a South Ward perspective, we need to remember the culturally and linguistically diverse community. So for those who have English as a second language, especially in my ward, I think we're going to need to put translation services and simple messaging at the forefront of our communication plan. On top of that, I think it's good news about the request for an additional Waste Services Education Officer. The team, led by Amani and also by both Emmas, do a terrific job after hours at a number of community events, often in the heat, making sure that our community are well educated and briefed on all of the waste services practices around here. So I also want to make one other comment, that engagement should be inclusive of all. So if our waste service officers, as they communicate this plan, can visit our community centres, speak to the user groups, particularly our seniors clubs, I think it will be important that we make sure that everyone's aware of the change well in advance. They know what's going on. They know what the all of the rules and restrictions are, because we can't just simply rely on digital and written communication. So as such, Mayor, happy to commend the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Savitton, would you like to speak to this topic?
Very briefly, not much more to add, and all I can say is that I think all the bulk on the verges will be well picked up by council, and not council contractors, I should say. And sorry, but this is a good position for this council to implement now. I think it will have a better control on waste collection, junk collections. We won't have hoarding. It'll be a much cleaner, if I can put it in those words, a cleaner way of actually collecting and disposing of waste without all the traumas that we've had in the past. So I'm more than happy to endorse the new process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, I put it to the vote. Thank you. And that's passed unanimously. Further to Councillor Miles's point of clarification, I just want to advise Council that item 5.4 of the standing orders, no opposition to motions, state item 2 says if no member signifies opposition to the motion, the presiding person may then take the vote without debate. And I'm aligning the procedures of our council with that item. So just if there's any clarification, that's in the standing orders. Thank you. I move to item CSO3 in Corporate Strategy and Performance, Mid-Year Review of Corporate Business Plan 2022 to 23 to 25-26 and the Annual Budget 2022 to 23. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Rowe, seconder Councillor Savitton. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Just briefly to say that I think administration's done a good job of preparing a comprehensive report, and I do thank the Director of Assets last week for clarifying the good news that Girraween Avenue is going to get some bus embayments in the future. I was very pleased with that outcome, as you saw from the visible smile on my face on the recording. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Savitton, would you like to speak to this and bus embankments, maybe?
Yeah, it might be a bus stop, no. The report's always well presented, and it gives us the information that we want for the mid-year review of the corporate business plan. So I have no hesitation in seconding this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Do I have any opposition or anyone who wants to speak against this item? If no one wants to speak against this item, I move it to cast our vote. Thank you, councillors. And that was passed unanimously. I move to item CSO2. Conversation in the thing, are we doing a meeting or are we conversing on the side? Okay, let's concentrate on the meeting. Item CSO2 223, Corporate Performance Report 22-23, Quarter 2. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Parker, a seconder? Councillor Herridge. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this item?
Very happy with the report as is and nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this?
Thanks, Mayor. Nothing else to add.
Thank you. Anyone to speak against this item? If there's no speakers against the item, I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. Councillor Civic. And that was passed unanimously. Thank you. We're going to transactional finance, and I would like to move these items in block from CS03 223 to CS07 223. Do I have a mover and a seconder for these items on block? Yes, Councillor Huntley, a seconder, Councillor Herridge. Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm happy with the reports, and I think we should move on block.
Thank you. Councillor Herridge. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I've got no speakers against these items, I move to the vote. Thank you. So I have 9 for, and Councillor Miles has voted against. Okay, that is passed. That item is passed. I move to Property Services CS08 223, the proposed excision and sale of portion of Lot 1101 190 Mary Street, Wanneroo, to the Water Corporation. Should there be any discussion on this, we will need to go to a confidential, close the doors because there's confidential information. Who would like to move this? Councillor Wright, seconder, Councillor Civic. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. The only comments I want to add is obviously Water Corporation has engaged the city on this matter, and it's great to see that the partnership between the two. I noticed that in the financial implications section, obviously we will get $300,000 from this transaction, and I know under statutory powers that Water Corp can take this without paying for it. So it is nice that we are doing this obviously in a timely fashion, but also working with our stakeholders. Because on page 429 it does say, administration notes that the Water Corp has statutory powers to compulsorily acquire the bore site to facilitate this as a major capital work. And the Water Corporation has not attempted to exercise these powers, but to work collaborative with the city. And I think this is a great thing going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic.
Yes, yeah, I agree with Councillor Wright. The sump being acquired by the Water Corporation, the actual valuations on that seem to be realistic, and I think in line with property value for that area. It is a site that will be required by the Water Corporation, I guess, for parts of East Wanneroo, etc., for whatever reason they choose to use it for. But I think the actual values are correct, and I certainly endorse the recommendation that we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I have no speakers against this item, I move it to the vote. Thank you. And that was passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I move on to item CS 100223, which is the proposed excision and dedication of a portion of Lot 500 Calvert Way, Girraween Senior High School as road reserve. And Councillor Rowe, you have an impartiality interest?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. In relation to CS 100223, I'd just like to disclose that I'm on the board of Girraween Senior High School, but when the matter was discussed, I removed myself from the room, so I wasn't privy to the discussion. I disclose that impartiality interest, as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected, but I declare that I will consider it on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Do I have a mover for this item? Yes, Councillor Rowe, and I second Councillor Miles. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Just briefly to talk about the significance of the project. I think some councillors would be aware this has been in the works for a long time, and I know the report itself is just about the excision of land, but it is an important stage in the longer term project to fix up this intersection and to make it a lot safer for not just the local residents but also the motorists who use this road on a regular basis. So councillors may recall that the project was successful in securing black spot funding late last year, and I would like to acknowledge on the record the Member for Parliament, Meredith Hammett, who advocated very strongly for that to occur. and is aware of the constraints to do with this intersection. The intersection has been problematical for some time. There is limited visibility turning off Girraween Avenue, and there's also motorists who are accelerating along Marangaroo Drive from that Mirrabooka Avenue side of the area. There have been numerous crashes over the years, as was provided to us in a previous report, including, tragically, a number of fatalities as well. The roundabout is a suitable option, which is the eventual way it'll be constructed, because there are already existing traffic lights at Highclere Boulevard. It also will ensure that there is a good amount of traffic flow along a key east-west connector road. The traffic volumes are expected to increase over time because this is very close to the land which has been earmarked for the development of the Vietnamese Cultural Centre. So that will be increasing the level of traffic in the area. And I think it's timely that we progress the construction of this intersection to make sure that we maximise road safety in the area. So just to encourage the city to continue negotiations with Western Power, subject to this report going through, to adhere as close as possible to the construction timeline, noting that construction is hopefully going to start towards the end of the year in the summer holidays, so it doesn't disrupt the students in the neighbouring schools.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you. This is, I guess, as Councillor Rowe knows, this is my old high school. Nothing's changed around the high school since I went there. So some of the road upgrades are in desperate need. They were many years ago, as Councillor Rowe indicated. And I think the other opportunity with the, for me, is the Vietnamese Association going to be building their site on the school oval. That's going to add to another level of traffic, and obviously being able to upgrade some of this road infrastructure around the school is obviously going to be able to appease and help with that traffic flow. And as Councillor Rowe indicated, roundabouts are always the best thing because it keeps traffic flowing, where traffic lights just stop people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Do I have any speakers against this motion? If I have no speakers against this motion, I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. And that is passed unanimously. I want to move items CS 110223 and CS 120223 en bloc. Councillor Wright, I understand you have an impartiality interest. If you'd like to declare that, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. CS 110223, donations considered by Council. With regard to this item, I disclose that applicant to St Anthony of Padua Catholic Church is my local church, and as a consequence there may be a perception that my impartiality on this matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do I have a mover for these two items? Thanks, Councillor Parker. Seconder, Councillor Civic. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to these two items?
Just quickly, the first one, extremely happy to support both of these donations. I feel no need to individualise either donation, as both items go to speaking volumes. In fact, all items go to speaking volumes about the policies the city has, in which we value the contribution of groups who are selflessly dedicated to improving, caring and supporting those who cannot. As to the Lord Mayor's distress, I think being a part of a community, a larger community is incredibly important. The floods were the largest we've had in history. I wish those people everything of the best. And $5,000 I actually worked out is about 22 cents per resident in the city of Wanneroo. And for me, that is a pleasure to be putting 22 cents to what is a very worthy cause. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to these items?
Only to say that both items are in line with the Council's donation policy, and I don't have a problem with either of the items, so I'm happy to support.
Councillor Smith, do you have a question or a declaration?
Just for the one coming up, I'm not sure if I need to do anything. If I can, Mr. Sims can help me. Thanks.
What we'll do is we'll just vote on this item first before we go to the next item. Councillor Ryan?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I was thinking of my impartiality interest when you were discussing. Would we be able to separate CS11 and CS12 if that's possible, to vote separately on both items, if that's okay?
If you want to, but we can do it together on block, but I can do it separately. Okay, so we'll vote on CS 110223 separately. So can we vote CS 110223 separately first, with Councillor Parker moving, Councillor Civic seconding? And that's passed unanimously. We'll now move to CS 120223, donation to the Lord Mayor's Distress Relief Fund for the Kimberley flood appeal, moved by Councillor Parker, seconded by Councillor Civic. And if there are no speakers against, we will go to vote on that item as well, the substantive. So we have 9 for and 1 against. Councillor Wright's voted against it. So we now move to CS 130223, the appointment of member to the Audit and Risk Committee and the Revenue Review Committee. I'd like to move that. Would anyone like to second it? Councillor Parker. Welcome, Councillor Smith. And that's all I'm going to say as my mover and my speaking. Councillor Parker, would you like to say anything?
No, absolutely nothing to add. Just welcome. Thank you.
Okay, do I have any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, I put that item to the vote. Thank you. Councillor Coetzee? And that was passed unanimously. We now move to CS 140223, which is the ordinary local government postal election October 2023. Who would like to move this item? Councillor Rowe, who would like to second it? Oh, we've got 3 on this side. I'll go with Councillor Herridge, give her a turn. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, I'll take one for the team. I just want to speak briefly on the reason that I still think the postal election format conducted by the Electoral Commission is the best option. Our good colleagues at the City of Swan and the town of Cambridge last year explored the options of having in-person elections. Some, I believe, were managed in-house and others by the Electoral Commission. And turnout roughly was sitting at 5% or lower in some cases. And I know the question we constantly get asked is the fees associated with a WAC conducted postal election. But my counter-argument to that comment would be, at what expense are we sacrificing a very low turnout where a candidate could sneak over the line with under 5% turnout, thereby maybe even under 100 votes in some case. It's a reality that I wouldn't like to see. In saying that, I think Councillor Miles made a really good point last week, which was exploring the options going forward of other forms of voting. I know we haven't looked really at digitally in terms of the Electoral Commission, but I think as more people get access to internet services, connectivity, we do at least have to start advocating for a review over time, a longer period of time. And obviously this, should the local government reforms get through the Parliament, it will lead to a change in the voting method from first past the post to optional preferential. So it will mean it'll be longer to count. While a valid vote will still be valid if there's only one box numbered, it will lead to some complications. So I think the Electoral Commission and the state government does have to consider what they're going to have to do in terms of educating voters about all the changes and why the state government should perhaps bear the cost of the additional education, given that they are the ones bringing forward the reform. So that's my comments on it.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I've nothing further to add.
Do I have any speakers against? If I have no speakers... Oh, Councillor Wright, do you want to speak against this motion?
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask a question.
Thank you. I attended a workshop on the weekend, and I just wanted a matter came up. Is the city in contract with the West Australian Electoral Commission, or are we locked into a contract to use them as the preferred supplier for an election, or can we actually use a external polling provider to conduct that election as a postal method still?
Mr Sims will respond to your question.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Wright.
My understanding is the proposed legislation is that you can use an alternative provider as long as they use the software system that's provided by the West Australian Electoral Commission. But I need to consider that a little bit further. So happy to maybe take that on notice and provide a bit more of a detailed response unless Mrs Jennings is aware of anything addition. But I do recall either something from the department or WALGA commenting on the proposed changes that will give some flexibility, but still a requirement to use the West Australian Electoral Commission software. So perhaps I could take that on notice and provide some further information.
Thank you, Mr Sims. Ms Jennings, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I can clarify further. So that was the option if the election was to be conducted with the CEO as the returning officer. There was an option to be able to use the software of the West Australian Electoral Commission to still do the count. But under the Act at the moment, if you choose to do postal, then you need to use the West Australian Electoral Commission.
Thank you, Ms Jennings. Do I have anyone speaking against this item? Do you have a question, Councillor Miles?
Yeah, could I just ask Ms Jennings just to clarify that last point? I didn't quite hear the last point of her answer.
Ms Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. I was actually just reading on page 491. You'll see it says, if the election is to be by post, then Council must resolve to appoint the WAEC and gain the agreement of the Electoral Commission to conduct the postal election. So,
thank you, Ms Jennings. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I have no speakers against this item, I put it to the vote. Thank you. Cast your vote, councillors. And that is passed unanimously. I move to the Department of Advocacy and Economic Development, CEO 1223, the Discover Wanneroo logo modification. Yes, Councillor Parker will move. Who wants to second it? Councillor Huntley. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, please. Thank you to all concerned for their input into this modification. As a large, growing and innovative city that is prepped and waiting to be fully discovered, I feel this logo, along with its vibrant colours and simple message, are perfect. Going forward, celebrating the city's cultural history and inviting tourism opportunities and sharing our city's vision will ensure opportunities for both visitors and residents alike. I would like to highlight the fact that the City of Wanneroo tourism industry generates sales of 420 million per annum. I really did not know that, so I was really excited when I saw that. $420 million per annum. The importance of this industry, which also employs 3,860 people, cannot be underestimated, and ensuring the city's messaging is clear and relevant is vital, and this logo achieves that. Thank you to everybody concerned. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. And Councillor Huntley, wasn't it? Would you like to speak to this item?
I support this item, and I'm looking forward to seeing this around the city. I'm sure it is going to engage a lot of people, and we could have even done probably a few more colours in the beach, bush and beyond, but it is certainly an asset to have a logo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I have no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that's passed unanimously. I go to item CEO 2223, Neerabup Industrial Area, Lot 9100 Business Plan. Do I have a mover for this item? Yes, Councillor Savitten. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wright. Councillor Savitten, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. this particular item. This is very, very important to the City of Wanneroo going forward, and I'm pleased that we've got to this stage now. I believe in the city itself there is a shortage of industrial land. Wangara is completely developed, almost developed, 90% developed, and this is the new area for the city. And with the all the aspirations we have about what sort of uses may be promoted and built in this particular area, I'm looking forward to this particular subdivision happening because of that shortage of land. I think it should be an outstanding success, and I hope we don't go through any recessions in the future, but I think the timing is right now. We've been sitting on this for quite a few years, and I'd like to thank Mr Marmion for his progression. His team have done a good job in bringing this forward to council, so I'm more than happy to support the recommendation on this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. It's great to see that our assets will start to pay dividends soon with this development of this business plan, and particularly with Neerabup. It is an exciting new project that will be going ahead, and for the city to be able to start to get an idea now with more timelines and a consensus of what's happening in the area. And I'm sure our Revenue Review Committee will be very exciting to see some of this come in and being reinvested into Neerabup and other projects in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do I have any speakers against this item? If I have no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously. Item 9, motions on notice, we have none. Item 10, urgent business, we have none. Item 11, confidential, we have none. Item 12, the date of the next meeting. A special council meeting has been scheduled for 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 7th of March 2023, to be held at Council Chambers, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road, Wanneroo. Item 13, closure, and I declare the meeting closed at 7:42 this evening. Thank you.